convince a client to hire me. I didn't know enough about business. So I was lacking in all those areas. And that's what was causing me to really struggle. 9 months into that, I gave up on freelancing. I'm like, this isn't working. I can't support my family doing this.
So, hey everyone, welcome back to Digital Talk Show with Arwa. And we have an amazing guest today named Chad. He's a creator of Freelancing Dads and a full-time father, husband, and a founder of ArrowLight Video, a video marketing agency. And he also has a YouTube channel where he teaches about winning clients from Upwork. So, welcome to the podcast, Chad, and tell us your story and how did you get into freelancing?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So just a recap of my story, my freelancing story is after college, I took a full-time job, had that for a few months, spending a couple hours every day commuting to that job. And pretty shortly, my wife got pregnant, and the thought of being a dad started to seem a little overwhelming. I wanted to be home more. I wanted to be with her more. I wanted to be with my kid more once he came. And so I started thinking about freelancing, and I ended up finding a client on the side while I had my full-time job, and I was doing videography for that client. It was a local client. So I started to experiment with it a little bit. And then that client ended up offering me a full-time job, but a work from home job. So I took that, and I was still an employee, but I was working at home. I was starting to experience somewhat of what it was like to have some more flexibility, have some more work-life balance, being able to work at home, but I still didn't have total control over my schedule or how I worked. I was still working as an employee. I couldn't have other clients. But then about 5 or so months later, about 3 months before my son was born, I lost that job because the company was downsizing. And so all of my income was gone right before I was about to be a new dad. And it was really scary. And I'm like, wow, I don't like this at all, how all of my income can just disappear at once. And so I started thinking about freelancing again, and I attempted, and I'm like, all right, well, let's try this freelancing thing, because I don't like how one employer can just drop the basket and all my income is gone. So for 9 months straight, I was attempting freelancing. I was trying to find some jobs on Upwork, and I was, submitting a bunch of proposals to video editing jobs and getting some random work. And I was getting a little bit of work, but it was not nearly enough to pay all the bills, to support my family. It wasn't consistent. I didn't really know what I was doing. So I was selling video editing as a service, and I knew how to do that really well. So it's not like I was not skilled with the thing I was selling, but I didn't know how to sell. I didn't have good communication skills. I didn't know how to get on a call and convince a client to hire me. I didn't know enough about business. So I was lacking in all those areas, and that's what was causing me to really struggle. So then 9 months into that, I gave up on freelancing. I'm like, this isn't working. I can't support my family doing this. And my previous employer actually offered me another job because their business bounced back. And so I was like, all right, I'm gonna take it because I'm getting into a lot of debt. And so I went ahead and took that job with them. They offered a little bit more than they did last time. And I did that for another year. But deep down inside, there was still that pit of like, hey, all my income can just go away at once if they let me go. And I didn't like that idea. And it was my wife that ended up bringing up, hey, you really need to try this freelancing thing again, because I think that's where you were the happiest. And even though it was a struggle, maybe you can figure out what you need to do differently. So I decided to attempt freelancing a second time. And I quit my job this time instead of waiting until I got fired. But I waited until I had a couple of clients on the side. And I experimented with just kind of raising my rate from 25 to 50 on Upwork. And I actually got one or two clients, and I'm like, hey, I might actually be able to earn more money doing this. But what I really did is I looked at all the things I did wrong the first time, and I've read books and took courses and found mentors to help me in the areas I knew I was weak in, which was sales and an online business and communication skills and some time management skills. It was all those things that I needed to improve, and so I really worked on those. And within a couple of months, I was able to replace my previous employee income. Um, Having improved in those areas, I was still just as good as a video editor as I was when I first attempted freelancing. It was all the other things that I finally worked on, which helped me to actually find clients. And, that first year was still rougher in that it was like, I felt like it was very up and down, but on average, I was earning enough money to stop getting into debt. And that was the most important thing. I didn't have a lot of excess, but I was, I wasn't getting into the debt, and I was supporting my family. I was paying the bills. And then, I hit a point where I was able to pay off $20,000 of credit card debt in like 3 months. And from there, I was able to just keep working up through our different financial goals. And I was able to turn what was just some experimental side thing into a full-time business. And then, when the compound effect kicks in and eventually you're starting to get a lot more invites to jobs, and I didn't have to spend as much time looking for work because it started to come to me. And it got easier, and it gets easier, but it was definitely a rough couple of years at first. But I'm glad I stuck with it because I've been able to have a lot more time. Like now that my first baby is 6, I have a 6-year-old son, 2-year-old son, and then a
Wow.
4-month-old daughter. And
Wow.
and I've been able to have a lot more time with them, a lot more time with my wife because of freelancing, because of working from home. And there's no turning back now. So
That's awesome. That's like a commendable journey of yours. And I'm happy that like many people, quit freelancing after they, don't get clients or they get disheartened. But I think getting clients consistently needs effort from our side as well. So that is something I think your story reflected a lot. So as a freelancer, I know like there are many methods to get clients, and so for people having an online business, what is the primary source of getting clients? Is it Upwork, or do you find clients from elsewhere as well?
my primary source is Upwork. I also get clients through word of mouth, some referrals from past clients. I've gotten some clients on LinkedIn. Um, the reason why Upwork is still a primary source, and I'm not trying to let go of that. There are some restrictions on Upwork. At a certain point, I will have to uh, kind of start to separate from Upwork a little bit in order to have some more control over selling different types of services and stuff. But Upwork, the sales process is just much quicker because all of your potential clients, they're already looking for somebody like you. When I get in conversations with people through either networking events or LinkedIn, it's a much longer sales process. They might not be interested in what I have to offer yet. So it's a few months of casual conversation, and eventually, they might be interested. Whereas Upwork, they're already looking for somebody like you. They post a job looking for the service that you provide. So they're ready to just find the right person for that job. And
Right.
and so I think Upwork is a great place to certainly get started and get your business going. You can definitely scale past 6 figures on Upwork and support a family comfortably. And as far as forming an agency, which I have done, I don't do that through Upwork. I hire freelancers on Upwork, but I don't use their agency feature because I think it has a lot of limitations.
Okay.
So you do have to kind of, when you start to grow beyond that point, you have to look beyond Upwork in that way. But I still get most of my leads and job invites come in every day from Upwork, and it's worth the fee that they charge because they're essentially acting as a marketing manager for my business. They're acting as a salesperson. They're helping connect me with the clients that are looking for my services. And because I go after contracts that are long term and are higher paying, fairly quickly I get that fee from 20% down to 10% and then down to 5%. So I don't have many contracts where they're taking 20% out of it.
Oh, wow.
So yeah.
So I know, like you said, that when you attempted freelancing for the second time, now you went with $50 per hour. So like as a newbie freelancer, what should be someone's hourly rate and how should they calculate it?
The hourly rate.
Yeah.
So hourly rates are tricky because it really depends on a few factors. Here's some of the main things that affect an hourly rate. First, I wouldn't. So, the simple way to calculate it is just to figure out what you need your hourly rate to be to support your family. And that just comes down to after business expenses, what do I need to be earning to cover our bills, to have a little bit of extra padding? And then how many hours do I want to work? And how many days throughout the year do I want to work? Like for me, I work 4 days a week and about 5 to 6 hours a day. So it's around 20 to 25 hours a week. And that's ideal for me to have enough work-life balance. So I have to be earning a high enough hourly rate with the hours I am working and the amount of weeks that I want to work in order to get the money that I want. But I can't just decide what I want to earn and then just start charging that, because there's a lot of market things at play here that affect your hourly rate. So some things that I teach freelancers to look at when it comes to hourly rate is, first, you have to realize that a lot of it is experimentation. You're going to try something. If you're not finding any clients at that rate, then maybe it's too high or maybe it's too low. If you're starting, and it depends too on where you are in the world, because there's a lot of different economies that have different rates that based on the exchange rate. But here in the United States, if you're a beginner freelancer and you're charging $12 an hour, you're going to struggle to find clients because that's too low, regardless of what you're doing. Most of the clients, most of the companies here are going to look right past you, thinking that you're not going to bring quality work. Whereas starting somewhere in the 20s, $20 an hour or more is a better place to start. And then you can move up to 30, 40, 50, 75 and beyond. Now, as far as the exact hourly rate that you're figuring out, what I recommend doing is on a place, and an Upwork is a great place to do this, is just search for freelancers that are doing what you're doing. So if you're a video editor, search video editors on Upwork and make sure you've selected the freelancer type of search, not the job type of search. And start clicking on profiles of freelancers who are currently getting contracts. They're earning money. They seem to be doing well. And try to find freelancers that match your skill level. So if you're a expert video editor, you're really quick, you're really good at what you're doing, look at some profiles that freelancer has a similar skill level to you and see what they're charging. And if you can see their past history of jobs and what clients are actually paying them, that's a great starting point of an hourly rate to go ahead and go with, is that try to find freelancers that have the same skill level as you, go with that hourly rate. But then if you don't have any experience on your Upwork profile yet, and you don't have many past clients, you might have to drop that hourly rate a little bit, just because it's going to be hard to convince a client to hire you if you have if you don't have much of a portfolio yet, even though you have the skill. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't raise your hourly rate fairly quickly, only within a couple of months. So I went from 25 an hour to 30 to 35, jump to 50 to 55 to 75, all within about a 9-month period of time. So it doesn't have to take years to raise your hourly rate. But the reason why I was able to scale it up that quickly is because I got a ton of jobs, smaller. So at first, what I recommend doing is getting a lot more smaller jobs, just so you can have more finished projects on your profile if you're on Upwork, so that you can start getting ratings and reviews and testimonials. Don't just take long-term client work where it takes 6 months to get a testimonial from them. You need to have some social proof as quickly as possible. You need to have some smaller projects that you can finish within a week, just so you can start building up a portfolio. And then it will be easier to raise your hourly rate after that point. Now, in the video editing industry, I hit a limit around 75 an hour where I really couldn't earn more than that. I couldn't convince clients to pay me more than that as a video editor, because there were too many other really good video editors charging even less than that. So that's where I had to shift my business over to strategy. I was doing video strategy and marketing consulting because I was able to earn a lot more doing that. And because I was in the industry long enough, I learned enough about various tactics. So I altered my business over to being more of a consultant and helping with strategizing on what types of videos to do and producing them. But I wasn't doing the actual video. I don't do video editing anymore. And now I just provide that as a service through my agency. And so those are some things that you need to look at is don't just go Googling the market rate. Don't look at what employees are getting paid for what you're doing. What an employee is getting paid hourly is very different than what you need to be getting paid as a freelancer because you have business expenses to account for that employee does not have. You're also, if you're trying to work less than 40 hours a week, now you will be, if you're working 40 hours a week, you're not going to be working 40 hours that are billable to clients per week. You might be working 20 hours that are billable, and the other 20 you're working on your business. You're submitting proposals. You're working on your website. You're working on the business, and that's time that you have to factor in each week, as well. When it comes to figuring out what do I need to charge a client, so that with all the hours I'm working in a week, including non-client stuff, when you're just working on your business, that you're still walking away with enough per hour. So hopefully that is helpful and answers your question.
Yes, absolutely. And so since you said like you have a video marketing agency, I know like you must be working with a team and sending out payouts to them. So do most people struggle with hiring their first person in the business. So what do you recommend for someone looking to scale from freelancer to an agency?
So if you're wanting to scale to an agency, one, when you're deciding whether to do that or not, it really comes down to you've now maxed out on clients. You can't get any more clients without investing more time than you want to. So let's say you only want to work 25 hours a week, and now you have enough clients to fill that 25 hours. And now you have more clients that want to work with you that would take you over 25 hours. Now it's time to scale into an agency. And that doesn't have to be this huge deal. You're hiring a bunch of people. It can start with you just hiring a virtual assistant. And that's what I did is I just hired a virtual assistant to help take on some of the smaller, easier tasks that I was doing every week to free up my time to then work on just some of the strategy stuff with clients. So like I still do the sales in my business primarily, but have an assistant who helps to assign tasks to the video editor and helps with all sorts of random tasks, random emailing related stuff. And so in my agency, I help to run clients' YouTube channels as well. And so my assistant helps to get the videos ready to publish. I'm not doing that directly anymore, but I'm helping to develop the strategy for the client. So over time, and I'm still in the process of really scaling this, I'm not even close to where I want it to be eventually. But right now I have a team of about 6 different freelancers, and they're all taking on, video editing, a writer, a personal assistant, and a couple of video editors actually when you're hiring. So when you scale into an agency, one, I recommend just hiring freelancers. Don't go hiring employees. For the same reason that you're working as a freelancer, you want to be hiring freelancers because you're going to have a lot more flexibility as you're scaling an agency to keep your expenses down. Because when you're hiring a freelancer, you're only paying them for a couple hours a week, and you can pay them whenever you have work for them. So whenever you have a client who's paying you, you then hire a freelancer to do some of the work, and you don't have to worry about the overhead expense of just paying for an employee every week, whether you have work for them or not. So you definitely don't want to just go hiring employees that have a fixed salary, because that can really sink your business as you're trying to transition into an agency. At some point, you might want to hire some employees once you're big enough that you'll have consistent work for them to be able to pay for 20 hours a week of work for them. But I like hiring freelancers too, just because I want to support them and I want to help support a shift in the workforce where the majority of workers are freelancers. And I think that is possible. So yeah, those are some things to look at regarding starting an agency. Is your whole pricing structure will have to change. You're going to have to start charging flat rates more than hourly. You can charge hourly rates as an agency. It's just more difficult to factor that in. So if you're doing a project for a client and let's say it's a video, instead of charging 50 an hour, now you're just charging $500 for the video, but you rope in the expenses of your team into that. You also calculate the time that you're going to be investing in that project, and you add profit on top of that and some buffer in case the client makes the project go a little longer than you thought. So that you're always, I usually try to factor in at least 20% profit on top of all the expenses, on top of what I want to pay myself, on top of what I'm paying my team to do something. And so, yeah, just the biggest thing with starting an agency is just remember you can start very small. You can start by just hiring one person, a virtual assistant who is a freelancer who you're only paying 1 or 2 hours a week or something. It doesn't have to be this huge deal, but that will start to free up your time to find more clients. So like I have kind of a rule that I go by where I never say no to a client that's a good fit, because even if I'm maxing out on time, if I keep getting more and more clients and I keep doing sales every single week, I keep getting on calls with clients every single week, even though my time is full, because I know I can just keep hiring more people to keep growing my business as I get more clients. So I'm never telling a client, hey, you're going to have to wait in line and in 3 months from now, then you can work with me. I just say yes, yes, yes to everyone that wants to work with me, if they're a good fit, if they're my ideal kind of client to work with. Because I know I can just keep growing my agency to support that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, like, do you deal with any client disappointments, or are there times where the client is not satisfied with the work? So, how do you deal with something like that?
Yeah, no, I've definitely dealt with that. And the only times where I've had a client not satisfied with the work is when there wasn't clear expectations set at the beginning of what they were expecting. When the expectations were clear, they were always satisfied with the work. We always tried to deliver high quality that matches the value that they're paying for. And so I've never had even on Upwork, I've never had a client leave a really bad review. I've had clients that have left maybe 3 or 4 stars and then just didn't leave any feedback. But the times where that happened, and I got better at it over time. At first, when I was freelancing, I was also working with clients out of desperateness that weren't a good fit. And they were the type of client that would just never be happy enough. Whereas now I know how to detect those types of clients and I just don't work with them. So it's rare that I have those experiences now. But when you have a client that's not satisfied, the best thing you can do, and actually, earlier this year, I had an experience of a client who was they weren't liking the kind of videos that we were doing, and they felt like they were spending too much time having to constantly give feedback and whatnot. The biggest thing is to just take ownership as a freelancer for your part in it. Yes, there are times when the client is also at fault where they didn't communicate clearly enough what they wanted, or you did and they just didn't listen properly. But just the most important thing is that even if it's going to cost you a little bit extra time to maybe do something again, or let's say you do a video and it wasn't right and you charged a fixed rate, now you have to do it all over again, and now you're only going to be getting $10 an hour for the time you're investing. It's worth it to not hurt your reputation, especially when it comes to places like Upwork and they have to leave ratings and reviews. It's worth it to just get the work done, leave on a good note, keep working at it until they're satisfied, and then just take a note on what led to that bad client experience so that you don't have that again, so that you don't work with somebody like that again. And just so that you don't keep repeating the same mistake of, okay, maybe you didn't set clear expectations at the beginning. You didn't roadmap the project correctly enough. So they had different expectations in their head. And that's what made them dissatisfied. And that's a lesson you can just learn for the next time so that you don't have that experience again. But it's worth it to even take a pay cut in order to make sure the client is satisfied. And there's times when you have to sever the relationship and you're just working with somebody that just is impossible to satisfy, and they're always finding some kind of problem. But don't, as a freelancer, you have to be able to manage your emotions in those situations, even if you know you're getting less money, and just and it's okay to stand your ground on pointing, like when I've been in those situations, I've pointed out to the client, hey, this is where you could have done better. You didn't communicate this to me. You said this. I make sure that they know where they went wrong. But I start by owning up to what I did wrong. I start by saying, hey, I'm sorry. I know that I didn't communicate that clearly enough. And here's how I can make this right. It's just providing good customer service. When you're dealing with a business that you're buying stuff from, you like it when they have good customer service and they're willing, you go and let's say you go and buy some food at a restaurant and they didn't do it right. You expect them to make it right, even though it's going to cost them some money to do it all over again. And so, yeah, those are some ways to deal with that, is just make sure you don't blame the client. Don't get all angry at them. Just take ownership for your side of it, point out where they went wrong, and just really be diligent at making it right. So then you can leave that relationship on a good note and not have your reputation hurt by them slamming giving you a really bad review. And yeah.
Yeah, I think that communication improves over the time as you start working with more and more clients. So, like for someone who's just starting out on Upwork, what's the one piece of advice that you would give them?
If you're just starting out on Upwork, one of the best pieces of advice is to accept the reality that you're going to be doing a lot of sales, and it's the thing that we dislike the most. We like to do our craft, we like to freelance, but we don't like to get on sales calls. We don't like to try to convince a client to hire us. So learn sales skills, take courses, read books, practice how to sell, and accept the reality that you're now a salesperson. Because you're going to be putting in even a lot more effort at the beginning to convince a client that you're worth it without having much of a history yet, without having a big portfolio. My sales calls are simpler now. When I get on a call with a potential client, they already have a lot of trust in me because of my portfolio. But when you're just getting started, they don't have that trust yet. So you're going to have to spend some more time on the phone really talking through why you're worth what you're charging. And and I have a course coming out soon where I'm teaching about sales, and I have a lot of videos on sales, but there's a process to sales that you need to learn that will help you when it comes to getting on these calls. You should be sending proposals, several every single day. You should be getting on calls with potential clients several times a week. And then it will reduce over time. You'll be doing a lot more of that up front. You'll be getting very little from it, but then over time, you'll get more and more. Your conversion rate will get higher and higher. And 1 out of every 2 or 3 sales calls will turn into a client, and you won't have to spend as much time doing sales. And eventually, when you have an agency, you can hire somebody to do a lot of that for you as well. Yeah, there's a lot of different things when it comes to getting started on Upwork, but that is one really key aspect is just realize how important it is that you learn how to do sales and accept that reality, because no matter how good of a writer or graphic designer or consultant you are, you need to know how to sell that, or you're not going to be able to convince clients to hire you.
Right, absolutely. So like you said that your course is coming out. Can you tell us more about that, and like where can people find you apart from that?
Yeah, if you go to freelancefamilyman.com, that's where you can submit your name and email just to download a free book. And then if your email is on my list, you'll be the first to know when. So I'm literally wrapping up over the next week a text version of a course that I'm creating called Employee to Freelancer. And it's really for any freelancer. But if you're a parent, there's some things I talk about that are especially important to being a parent and freelancing, where you're supporting a family, and there are some different pressures, and there's a bit of a different process you have to go through to safely transition into freelancing when you're supporting a family. And I'll be selling the text version of that course at first before creating a video version of it. And so just go to the website, freelancefamilyman.com, and you can just submit your name and email there to get on that newsletter. And that's the best way to stay in contact with me. And then you can go to my YouTube channel, Freelance Family Man, and subscribe there. And I'm also on Instagram as well, where you can get short videos, and that's how you can stay connected.
Okay, thank you so much, Chad. It was an amazing session with you, and I'll mention all the links that you just said in the description box. So if any of you want to find him, you can go in the description box and click the links there. Thank you so much again for getting on
Thank
a
you.
call with me, and it was an amazing session.
Absolutely.